My name is Owen Mitchell, and I never thought a door-to-door Elijah would change my life. I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer working for my small but cozy apartment in Boston. My life was fairly routine: client meetings, deadlines, and the occasional video game marathon until that rainy September afternoon when my doorbell rang. I remember being slightly annoyed at the interruption. I was in the middle of a crucial project, my desk cluttered with sketches and my dual monitors displaying half-finished designs, wearing my comfortable work from home outfit, a faded Harvard t-shirt and sweatpants. I wasn't exactly prepared for visitors. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with the most captivating pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. The man standing there was tall, probably in his early 30s, with sandy blonde hair and a warm smile that seemed to brighten the gloomy day. He wore a navy blue blazer with a company logo, and despite the rain, he looked impeccably put together. "Hi, I'm James Cooper from Safeguard Home Security," he said, his voice carrying a slight British accent that immediately caught my attention. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," I should have said. Yes, I should have politely declined whatever he was selling. Instead, I found myself saying, "No, not at all, please come in." Out of the rain, James hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside carefully, wiping his shoes on my welcome mat. As he moved past me, I caught a whiff of his cologne, something subtle and woodsy that made my heart rate pick up slightly. "That's very kind of you," he said, running a hand through his slightly damp hair. "Most people don't even open the door these days." "Well, I work from home," I explained, leading him to my living room. "Sometimes human interaction is nice, even if it's with someone trying to sell me something I probably don't need." He laughed, and the sound was rich and genuine, honest and direct. "I appreciate that, though I might surprise you with something you do need," as he set up his tablet to show me the security system features. I found myself more interested in watching his hands move as he spoke. They were elegant but strong, with long fingers that gestured expressively as he explained various features. "So you're a graphic designer?" he asked, glancing at my workstation. "Yeah, mostly freelance work for tech companies and startups. I studied art in university before falling into sales," he shared, surprising me. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, doesn't it?" Our eyes met, and there was a moment of connection that felt deeper than a typical sales interaction. I noticed him glance quickly at my pride flag coaster on the coffee table, then back at me with what seemed like increased interest. "It certainly does," I replied softly. What was meant to be a quick sales pitch turned into a 2-hour conversation. We discussed everything from art to traveling to our favorite coffee shops in Boston. James was fascinating. He lived in London until he was 25, then moved to the States for a change of pace. He had a dry wit that made me laugh more than I had in months. As the rain continued outside, creating a cozy atmosphere in my apartment, I found myself hoping he wouldn't leave too soon. When he finally glanced at his watch and said he should go, I felt a pang of disappointment about the security system. He said, standing up, "I knows you probably weren't planning on getting one today." "Actually," I interrupted, "I think I might be interested, but I might need another consultation to go over the details, maybe over coffee." The words were out before I could stop them. and for a moment I held my breaths, worried I'd completely misread the situation. James's face broke into a warm smile that reached his eyes. I would love that, though I should warn you, if this turns into a coffee date rather than a business meeting, I'll have to disclose that to my supervisor. A date sounds much better than a business meeting, I admitted, feeling my cheeks flush slightly. We exchanged numbers, and James suggested a small cafe near the public garden for Saturday morning. As he headed toward the door, he turned back. You know, I've been doing this job for 3 years, and this is the first time I've asked a client out for coffee. Maybe you just hadn't found the right client, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. After he left, I spent an embarrassing amount of time replaying our conversation in my head instead of working on my project. There was something about James that felt different from anyone I'd met before, a genuineness beneath his polished sales persona that intrigued me. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, nervous energy making me fidget with my phone. I changed outfits 3 times that morning, finally settling on a blue button-down shirt that my friend said brought out my eyes, and dark jeans. James arrived right on time, looking even more handsome in casual clothes, a grey sweater and jeans that fit him perfectly. When he spotted me, his face lit up in a way that made my heart skip. I was half afraid you wouldn't show, he admitted as he sat down across from me. I thought maybe you'd regret inviting out the pushy salesman who invaded your afternoon. Actually, I've been looking forward to this since Wednesday, I confessed, though I do have one complaint. You never did finish telling me about that year you spent backpacking through Europe. Our coffee date stretched into lunch and then into a walk through the public garden. The autumn air was crisp and the trees were just beginning to turn golden as we walked. James told me about his childhood in Sue, his coming out story at 19 to surprisingly accept acting parents, and his dreams of eventually opening his own art gallery. What about you, he asked as we paused by the Swan boats. Have you always wanted to be a graphic designer? Actually, I started out studying architecture, I explained, but I realized I was more interested in creating digital spaces than physical ones. My parents weren't thrilled about the switch at first, but they came around when they saw how much happier I was. They live nearby there in Connecticut, close enough to visit regularly, far enough to maintain my sanity. I joked. What about your family, all back in England? He said, a hint of melancholy in his voice. I try to visit twice a year, but it's not the same. Sometimes I miss them terribly, especially during the holidays. Without thinking, I reached out and squeezed his hand instead of letting go. He interlaced our fingers and we continued walking like that, both pretending this was perfectly normal for a first date. As the afternoon light began to fade, neither of us wanted the day to end. There's a nice Italian restaurant near my apartment, I suggested. If you'd like to continue this over dinner, I'd like that very much, James replied, his thumb tracing small circles on my hand. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at eating spaghetti gracefully. It might ruin all my sophisticated British charm. I laughed. I think I'm willing to risk it. The Italian Ristora NT Romano was a small, family-owned place with warm lighting and red checkered tablecloths. As we settled into a cozy corner booth, James looked around Appreciatively, "This is lovely," he said. "Much better than the chain restaurants I usually end up at during lunch breaks." Our waiter, an elderly Italian man named Marco, brought us wine and fresh bread as we looked over the menus. James and I kept catching each other's eyes and smiling like teenagers on their first date. "So," James said, taking a sip of wine, "tell me about your last relationship, if that's not too forward." "Not at all," I replied. "It ended about a year ago." David, he was a lawyer, very focused on his career. We were together for 2 years, but in the end we wanted different things. He was all about climbing the corporate ladder, and I paused, trying to find the right words. "I guess I wanted something more authentic." James nodded understandingly. "I know what you mean. My last relationship ended 6 months ago. Thomas was wonderful in many ways, but he couldn't understand why I'd leave a successful marketing career in London to start over in Boston. He thought I was having some sort of crisis." "Well, you know," James said thoughtfully, "I just felt like there was something more waiting for me here, though I admit selling security systems wasn't exactly what I had in mind." Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our food. Spaghetti carbonara for James and chicken marsala for me. True to his warning, James did struggle a bit with his pasta, and there was something endearing about watching him try to maintain his dignity while chasing a rebellious strand of spaghetti. "You've got a little," I gestured to the corner of his mouth where a spot of sauce had landed instead of using his napkin. James leaned forward slightly. "Would you mind?" My heart racing, I reached across the table and gently wiped the sauce away with my thumb. Our eyes met, and the restaurant seemed to fade away around us. The moment was broken by Marco arriving to refill our wine glasses, giving us a knowing smile. After dinner, we walked back to my apartment, our shoulders brushing occasionally. The night had grown chilly, and when James noticed me shivering slightly, he removed his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. "Very gentlemanly," I teased, though I was touched by the gesture. "Well, I am British," he replied with a wink at my door. We both hesitated. The evening had been perfect, and neither of us wanted to risk ruining it by moving too fast. "I had a wonderful time," James said softly. "Me too," I replied, shrugging off his jacket to return it. "Keep it," he said. "It gives me an excuse to see you again." Before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but when I responded, the kiss deepened. His hands came up to cut my face, and I found myself gripping his sweater, pulling him closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both slightly breathless. I should go," he whispered, though he made no move to leave. "Or you could come up for coffee," I suggested. James smiled but shook his head. "As much as I want to, and believe me, I really want to. I'd like to do this right. Take it slow." I nodded, understanding but slightly disappointed. He kissed me again softly. "This time I'll call you tomorrow." "He asked you better," I replied, still a bit dazed from the kiss. I watched him walk away, turning back once to wave before heading inside. As I got ready for bed that night, I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in a long time, I felt like something significant was beginning. Over the next few weeks, James and I fell into a comfortable rhythm. He would often stop by my apartment during his lunch breaks, bringing sandwiches or sometimes leftover lasagna from his Sunday cooking experiments. I discovered he was an excellent cook, though he claimed it was just because he missed proper British food one rainy Wednesday about 3 weeks after our first date. I was struggling with a particularly difficult client project when James arrived. "You look stressed," he said, setting down a bag of Thai food and coming to massage my shoulders. "This client keeps changing their mind about what they want," I groaned, leaning back into his touch. "First it was minimalist, then retro, now they want something innovative but traditional, whatever that means." "Show me," he asked, pulling up a chair beside me. I showed him the various designs I'd created, and to my surprise, he had some genuinely helpful suggestions. His art background gave him an eye for detail I hadn't expected. "You should be doing this instead of selling security systems," I said, implementing one of his ideas, his hands stilled on my shoulders. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. There's a small gallery for sale in the South End. I've been looking at the numbers, trying to see if I could make it work." I turned to face him. "Really, James, that's amazing. It's just a dream right now," he said, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. "I'd need to save up more, maybe find investors. Let me help." I offered. I could design the branding, website, everything. He kissed me then, catching me off guard, but in the best way possible. "You're incredible. You know that weekend we went to look at the gallery space together, it was smaller than the major galleries but had character. Exposed brick walls, high ceilings with original beams, and large windows that let in natural light." James walked through the space with a look of wonder, already planning where different exhibits could go. "This corner would be perfect for emerging artists," he explained, gesturing enthusiastically, "and we could host small events here, maybe partner with local art schools." Watching him in his element, I fell a little bit more in love with him. Not that I'd said those words yet, it felt too soon, too vulnerable, but the feeling was there, growing stronger each day. After viewing the gallery, we grabbed coffee and sat in a nearby park, discussing possibilities. James had clearly thought this through. He had spreadsheets on his phone showing potential costs and revenue projections. "The current owners are willing to sell for a reasonable price," he said, "but I'd still need a significant loan and leaving a steady job for something this risky. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards," I said, quoting something my grandmother used to say. He smiled, taking my hand. "When did you get so wise?" "Must be all that time I spend with this sophisticated British guy," I teased. Later that evening, back at my apartment, we were curled up on the couch watching a movie when James suddenly said, "Move in with me." I sat up, surprised. "What? I've been thinking about it," he continued, looking nervous but determined. "If I'm going to buy the gallery, I'll need to cut expenses. My apartment is bigger than yours and the rent isn't much more. We already spend most of our time together." "Anyway, James," I interrupted his rambling, "are you asking because of the gallery, or because you want to live together?" His expression softened. "Both, but mostly because I love you and I want to fall asleep next to you every night instead of just on weekends." My heart stopped for a moment. "You love me." "I do," he said simply. "I know it's only been a few weeks, but I've never been more certain of anything." Instead of responding with words, I kissed him, trying to pour all my feelings into that one action. When we finally pulled apart, I whispered, "I love you too, and yes, I'll move in with you." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Moving in together was both exciting and challenging merging our lives meant compromising on everything. From furniture placement to coffee brands, James insisted on keeping his expensive coffee maker while I refused to part with my oversized reading chair. It doesn't match anything, James complained, looking at my worn leather chair in his otherwise carefully coordinated living room, but it's comfortable, I argued, pulling him down to sit with me squeezed together in the chair. I added, see, perfect for two. He laughed, adjusting to make room. Fine, the chair stays, but we're getting a new slip cover. Living together revealed new aspects of each other's personalities. I discovered that James was almost obsessively neat, while he learned that I had a habit of leaving half-finished cups of tea around the apartment. He was a morning person who liked to go running at dawn, while I preferred to work late into the night, but we adapted. I started using coasters and keeping my creative chaos confined to my home office. James learned to make less noise in the mornings and began leaving sweet notes next to my laptop when he left for work. One morning, about a month after moving in together, I woke up to find James sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by papers and looking worried. What's wrong? I asked, pouring myself coffee. The bank rejected my loan application for the gallery, he said quietly. They said I don't have enough collateral or business experience. My heart ached seeing him so disappointed. There are other banks, I suggested, sitting beside him, or maybe we could look into small business grants. He smiled weakly. Of course, we your dreams are my dreams now. Remember that evening I called my parents. They had been surprisingly supportive when I told them about James and moving in together. My mother had even started sending him her secret family recipes. Dad, I said, after catching up, you know how you've always said you wanted to invest in something meaningful. 2 weeks later, we were signing papers. My father had agreed to be a silent partner in the gallery, providing enough capital to secure a smaller bank loan for the remainder. James tried to protest at first, saying it was too much, but my father waved him off. Consider it an investment in both the gallery and my son's happiness, he said during a video call. The day we got the keys to the gallery, James stood in the empty space, tears in his eyes. I can't believe this is really happening, he said. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. Believe it, though I do have one condition for my part in all this. What's that? You have to let me handle all the graphic design work. Your fonts are terrible. He turned in my arms, pretending to be offended. I'll have you know I took a typography course in university and clearly learned nothing. I teased. He silenced me with a kiss, then pulled back with a serious expression. Thank you, he said softly, not just for this, but for believing in me, for loving me always. I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The next 2 months were a blur of renovation work, permit applications, and preparations for the gallery's opening. We named it Cooper and Mitchell Gallery. Despite my insistence that James should use just his name, he refused, saying we were partners in every sense of the word. I designed everything from the logo to the website, while James focused on curating the opening exhibition. He decided to feature a mix of established and emerging artists, true to his original vision. Watching him negotiate with artists and arrange pieces, I saw him truly come alive. The week before the opening, we barely saw each other despite living together. James Was at the gallery constantly perfecting every detail while I worked late into the night finishing the catalogues and promotional materials. The morning of the opening I found James standing in the gallery at dawn adjusting a painting for the 800th time. Did you even sleep? I asked, handing him a coffee. Couldn't he admitted. What if nobody comes? What if they hate the collection? What if I cut him off with a kiss? Everything is perfect. You're perfect. The opening night exceeded all our expectations. The gallery was packed with art lovers, critics and curious locals. My parents flew in from Connecticut, and James's parents surprised us by flying in from England, seeing our families meeting for the first time, chatting and laughing together made my heart swell. Your young man has quite an eye for art, James's mother told me quietly. We worried when he left London, but now we can see why he needed to find his path. And you, the local art critic from the Boston Globe, wrote a glowing review praising the gallery's fresh perspective and thought. Full curation sales exceeded our projections, and several artists committed to future shows that night after everyone had left, and we were alone in the gallery. James pulled me into a dance despite there being no music. What are you doing? I laughed, celebrating. He said, spinning me around. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have. I corrected him, but I'm glad you didn't have to. He stopped dancing and reached into his pocket. I was going to wait, but this feels right. My heart stopped as he got down on one knee. Owen Mitchell, he said, his voice shaking slightly, when you opened your door to a desperate security system salesman, you changed my life. You believed in me when I barely believed in myself. You've supported my dreams, shared your family with me, and made me happier than I ever thought possible. He opened a small box revealing a simple platinum band. Will you marry me? Tears were streaming down my face as I pulled him up. Yes, I managed to say 1,000 times. Yes, the kiss that followed was interrupted by cheering. Our families had sneaked back in to witness the proposal. James's mother was crying, my father was beaming, and my mother was already talking about wedding plans later that night. Lying in bed in our apartment, I played with the ring on my finger while James dozed beside me. From that first knock on my door to this moment, our journey had been unexpected but perfect in its own way. What are you thinking about? James murmured, half asleep. How grateful I am that you tried to sell me a security system I didn't need. He chuckled. I never did make that sale, did I? know, I said, snuggling closer to him. You got something much better instead. Indeed I did, he agreed, pulling me closer. Indeed I did. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through our bedroom window, I watched James sleeping peacefully beside me. Who would have thought that opening my door to Elijah would lead to this? Sometimes the best things in life come from he most unexpected moments. As I drifted back to sleep, I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of our story.